Good morning. It's great to see such a big turnout for this morning session. Glad that you all could make it. We're looking forward to spending the next 90 minutes with you. I just wanted to quickly acknowledge that we also have people joining us virtually, and we'll find opportunities during the session to bring them into the discussion. So with that, I would quickly like to just welcome everyone. Feel free, relax. This is going to be an interesting conversation. We have some of our innovators in the room. We've got some of our panelists as well who will speak around what it takes to scale up some of the innovations that are looking into addressing some of the water and climate issues that our cities are facing. My role here is not to officially welcome you. My colleague Desigan Naidu, who's joining us virtually from South Africa, Pretoria, will do that. Desigan is with the SIWI Scientific Program Committee. He's also a climate adaptation lead for the South African Presidential Climate Commission. He's also wears a couple of other hats, such as a senior advisor with the World Bank. Before being a lead with the Presidential Climate Commission, he was the CEO of the South Africa Water Research Commission from 2011 to 2022. So he holds a lot of knowledge in the water sector. I will hand it over to you, Desigan, to paint the picture, and please just also provide a bit of background on the seminar and the sessions that go with this seminar. Please help me to welcome Desigan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see you, although you are rather far away from where I'm sitting right now. But this is the nature of our connected world, and our connected world helps us to get together. Our connected world also helps us to accelerate things in both directions, unfortunately. So while on the one hand, we have a connectivity that helps our solution frame to go broadly around the world very rapidly, all the malaise has the same opportunity. So every time there is a difficulty inside the system, like we had with the COVID pandemic, like we currently have with our climate change challenges in the world, exactly the same thing happens all over again. And I guess it's our job to organize ourselves around the innovation that it will take to use the opportunity and diminish the threats to the global environment. So welcome to all of you, both in the room in Stockholm, as well as online, to part 2 of our seminar. And our seminar is Innovations in Water and Climate. Yesterday, we had a really good session examining the issues of the just transition and how the just transition and the concept of climate justice needs to define everything that we do inside the space. And this follow-on is talking to the urban environment very specifically. And tomorrow we will follow this up by examining the rural and agricultural environment, and that would be led by another of our colleagues, Veena Srinivasan. So why the urban environment? Well, I think some of the answers are quite obvious. I mean, the IPCC in the 6th assessment report, which was a phenomenal set of an omnibus of reports around the state of climate change in the world, was very explicit around the centrality of the urban environment, in particular, maybe the cities. And what we're looking at here is the phenomenon of growing urbanization, which is saying to us that, one, urbanization is organizing for the urban environment to become the majority environment in the world in the very short term, actually. It's not eons away. The second is that part of that urbanization is also driven by climate change. I mean, climate-related migration inside countries from rural environments towards cities is driven very strongly by climate change, and in particular, the very negative impacts of climate change on water resources. We've seen the conflict issues associated with this being another factor in driving people to the urban environment. But the other side of the coin is that as urban environments grow, they become the more resourced areas of the world in order to effect the big changes that need to happen. So as a theater of operation, the urban environment is really central to any ambition around moving to a low carbon economy in general, and organizing for a climate resilient water system in the urban environment will have an obvious knock-on effect on the rural environment and all of the industrial sectors. So its centrality is really what we want to examine in this seminar. The second thing that I want to put on the plate is to remind ourselves that we're operating as part of the call in the UN system in this decade of action to empower the global acceleration framework for SDG 6. And the global acceleration framework is quite explicit about its 5 pillars. One of those pillars is specifically innovation, but we make the case that you actually require innovation in all 4 of the other pillars as well. The one that may be closest is the issue of data and information and digitalization, and broadly harvesting the fruits of the 4th industrial revolution as a core driver around us being able to organize for climate resilient water, sanitation, and wastewater systems in the world is absolutely key. It's also really important that we express the innovation in the governance pillar. Governance and policy innovations are absolutely key to create the right kind of enabling and catalytic environments for us to have the interventions that we need to see. We also need innovation in the finance pillar. The classical finance mechanism leaves not only large parts of the world outside the net of what is being served, it also organizes for sectors like the water sector to largely be outside that net as well. So innovative mechanisms with countries and people and businesses starting from close to zero bases and accessing finance around building more resilient futures, more water secure futures is absolutely key. And then the 5th pillar, of course, is capacity and capability. Clearly, as we move into the future, we need a much more expanded water team in the world with many more competencies than we were satisfied with before. And organizing for building that capacity needs high levels of innovation. And we'll be examining all of those in the seminar today. But to kick us off, we have asked one of the leading lights who is defining the cutting edge around wastewater treatment in the world and beneficiation of wastewater, finding the gold, if you like, in that black water, and someone who is expanding that innovation mindset into the broader rubric of water security, and in particular, climate resilient water security in the world, is Karthik Chandran. Karthik is a professor at Columbia University in New York, and he's going to offer us a keynote framing presentation to kick us off. So Karthik, I want to hand over directly to you for that framing presentation, and we look forward to a really exciting discussion this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Desigan. Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to share with you some of my thoughts on this very complex and very connected set of topics. So again, I'll stick close to the script, opportunities and challenges for climate accelerated transformation. I really love the term accelerated, and I think this is something that we can try to open up a little bit here as well. For some reason, this is not the slides.
and see if we can have a little bit of a makeshift seminar ourselves, and then when the other folk join, if they repeat the things that we're talking about, then we can pat our backs a little bit. So we're engaging the issue about what does it mean around water and innovations in the urban environment. And of course, we've been seized with this activity in the water sector for a fairly long time. This is true. But there is an added impetus right now being driven by climate change. I mean, the stuff that makes the media on an almost daily basis, unfortunately, are the extreme events, extreme weather events, wildfire events, the heat wave events. And in parallel to that, the other reality that we're living out every day is how these increased average temperatures are fundamentally changing our world. And the water sector is a litmus sector. It is that sector that gets affected by these matters way before the other ones do. I mean, you almost have an immediate reaction around water scarcity, either driven by drought factors or driven by flood factors, because both have the same impact. We have the pressures around the related systems because of this now water scarcity, and this impacts on the agricultural sector. There's lower water availability for industrialization. There's lower water availability to deal with the other negative impacts of climate change that organize for our health burdens to go up notches. In some places, exponentially, as the vector burdens simply expand on the back of viability of pathogens and vectors now that come with higher temperature levels. And then you have rising sea levels, and our coastal urban environments are under gigantic threat. And more than half of the people on Earth live in a coastal environment or very close to it. So the application of the innovation in the urban environment around water really needs to go up a couple of notches. So maybe to kick us off, if you indicate, I think you can use the reactions button to put up your hand, and I will try and find you. Let's hear about your ideas around what kinds of innovation make sense in an urban environment. Maybe you can add to that a couple of examples of what you consider a successful intervention with innovation for water in the urban environment. And maybe you can also point out the examples where you think that we are missing the mark, because that will all help us around sharing the knowledge to create a new base upon which we can grow. Sridhar is actually from the finance sector, and although he's going to speak more formally in the program later, we'll also ask him to come in a little bit to talk around some of the finance issues, the challenges, and the financial innovations. But for now, I think let's open the floor up and see if there are any takers. Alex, I see no hands currently. I think I'm looking in the right place. Not sure. Yes, Johan. As soon as someone indicates that they want to speak, you must please unmute them.
Maybe I can, I raised my hand, but not sure if you're able to see me.
No, I wasn't. And that could be the problem for other folk as well. Yeah, please go ahead, Sridhar.
Okay, thanks. Desigan, so the point you raised is very valid. Climate change and extreme effects of climate change is something we are getting to see more often now than ever before. Extreme droughts and extreme flooding and the related issues around that are now becoming commonplace. So clearly, climate resilience is is an aspect that needs to be built into any solution, especially cities, because cities are densely packed urban urban regions with a high population density, where there's a great need for infrastructure to be built and infrastructure to be maintained. So climate resilience is to be built in the whole design. Now, in the case of water and wastewater, that could, so there are two aspects to this. So one is climate resilience of the assets themselves. If you build a wastewater treatment plant, or if you build a water supply system, those assets need to be climate resilient. Meaning, if there are floods, you don't want your whole water supply system to be submerged. If you have a wastewater treatment plant, you don't want to have the whole plant being submerged and causing a greater issue than before. So, of course, it's important to ensure that the design of water supply and wastewater treatment systems are made keeping in mind resilience to climate change. That's certainly a key aspect. But there is another aspect which is also equally important. That is to build the resilience of communities to climate change. I think that's received very little attention. For example, if you have a city that needs water, and I can think of many cities in many countries, and I don't think any country is an exception. You read about this in South Africa, India, the US, Europe. I mean, I don't think any part of the world is immune to this. But you need to have you need to build the you need to build climate resilience into the water supply and wastewater treatment systems in these cities. So which means, what it basically means is, have a look at what are the sources of water supply. For example, if a city is completely dependent on, let's say, groundwater, okay, that's the least resilient way of doing it, because groundwater levels are going down all the time. Similarly, if you're very dependent on surface water, let's say some lakes or rivers, and these are very susceptible to drought. So how are we building in climate resilience? Are we reducing the dependence on groundwater and surface water? So I think that's a key point in the design. Even in cities that don't face a climate change issue, let's say a city has abundant water supply, but are you looking 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ahead? And are you building climate resilience into those designs? And some cities come to my mind that have successfully done this. For example, Singapore has a diversified water supply system, has wastewater treatment and recycling in a very big manner. Same with Chennai in India. About 15 years ago, we used to face huge water supply issues. And I come from Chennai, and I can tell you today the water supply sources are so diversified that the impact of climate change is felt less. So these are two examples I know myself. But when you design water supply systems keeping in mind climate change and diversify the sources of water, and incorporate wastewater treatment and recycling in a very big way into the water supply system, these are ways by which cities can adapt to climate change. They can become more resilient to climate change. This is my short submission.
That's really rich. Thank you so much, Sridhar. Colleagues, a note from Stockholm. They've located the issue. It was smoke in the kitchen, and they seem to have solved it. But the guys are still outside waiting for the go-ahead to return to the room. So I think we can continue our chat for a couple of minutes more. They will keep us informed as to exactly what they're doing. So colleagues, when Sridhar said that, he indicated I could not see that. So I think if you click on your own button, you can ask to unmute. And when you do, Johan will unmute you and you can get right into the chat if you can't hit your hand button. I'm just testing my own and mine seems to work. So try yours anyway. But while you were organizing yourself to do so, let me offer a few responses to what Shrita has put on the table. I mean, the first issue that I think we have to absorb is that we have very good examples all over the world, maybe not to the kind of scale of a Singapore or a Chennai, but there are almost no places in the world where you can't find at least an experiment on some level of innovation to organize for higher levels of water security in the system. So we have already a starting point. The second issue, and this is an issue that is particularly important with the successful cities and towns and countries, is where the water issue in that environment has become a paramount issue. So using the Singapore example, Singapore declared itself on a national water emergency. And based on that national water emergency, it organized to resource the innovations in water to a very large degree and organized for that to have primacy inside the system, but not with only water as the beneficiary. And I think this is a really important point. So the availability of water wasn't just about servicing people's need. It was about organizing for water availability for development of the system as a whole, for the country as a whole. So if you like, water as an engine for growth and development. And in many ways, Sridhar, Chennai is very similar in that regard. You know, the recognition that this is a constraint to development and we organize for this to be built into the system. The second interesting factor around this, around those places in the world, and you can see there are countries in the Gulf that are currently doing this. I mean, one of my other hats is I'm vice chair of a technical advisory group to the United Arab Emirates, where the ambition is to deal with the local water scarcity, to harvest the innovations from all over the world, not just in the local environment, but do it in a way that is supportive of a global effort around engaging the issues of water scarcity. And we see these successes happening in a couple of places around the world. And the need to mainstream that becomes part of the innovation, if you like. So that's just a couple of reactions to what Sridhar has put out. There's an input from Eden Takele, to say, how do we share lessons between cities? What are the opportunities for in-depth engagements where city experts can learn about the solutions that we're talking about here, and I guess in many other places as well. So maybe colleagues, you have some responses to that. I would suggest if you're not having success raising your hand or unmuting yourself, please use the chat for us to continue. Okay, and there is another suggestion that has come from our organizers, and Chris, I'll read yours out to everyone just now. Johan, you have access to the videos, right? That was going to constitute the first section immediately after the keynote.
I don't, I'm sorry.
You don't? Okay. I can try and pull it out from my email and try and flight it, and maybe you can help me if that doesn't go as well. Just to put you in the picture, so immediately after the keynote address, after Karthik, we were going to have a session of videos with case studies around 3 categories of innovation. So first was going to be the technological and digital innovations. We were then going to engage some policy innovations and then some financial innovations before we returned to the chat. So perhaps, Jan, if you can unmute Kirst, and she's going to respond to what Eden has asked while I try and fish out those videos quickly.
Hi, Design.
Hi. We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to respond to Eden and I don't know the details of that work in particular, but I do know that there's the C40 Cities network, and I think that they actively try to share lessons between the different cities and the solutions and what is working and what is not. I'm not sure if there's someone in this particular group that knows a little bit more or a bit more details about what this network is doing. And then I used to work for the International Water Association, and I know that they had a very large initiative on water-wise cities in which they tried to connect the cities with the broader water stakeholders to embark upon a journey together for at least signing up for principles within a city. And it's something that I can share the link of that as well a little bit later if you want.
I think that's a great idea. Kalitza, what I want to try now is I do have the video and I managed to get it on screen. Can you see this?
Yes.
You can?
Yes.
So I'm going to try and run the video and I hope it works. And thank you all for being so innovative around constructing this session.
To act as the nerve center for the rapidly urbanizing city, India's Smart Cities mission has set up integrated command and control centers. Already operationalized in 76 cities across the country, ICCCs are receiving real-time data from different sources to address the urban challenges across multiple domains. This information is being processed and analyzed to build situational awareness and decide on any necessary action. Having dramatically improved service delivery and active grievance systems throughout the city, ICCCs are now scaling up to diagnostic and prescriptive analysis, which is currently in nascent stages. Team Connect aims to establish a rapid collaboration system to jumpstart the ICCC's move to its next level of benefits to all city stakeholders while maximizing its potential. The Connect plugin will rapidly relay on-demand actionable outputs to the citizens and line departments, while also facilitating the move towards diagnostic and prescriptive analytics. The Connect plugin offers a 4-part process to address complex urban challenges: identify, defining the parts of the complex issue; engage, involving citizens and departments in understanding the parts; diagnose, correlating these parts to obtain insights; and finally, collaborate, converting and conveying the insights as actionable outputs. The pilot on urban water resilience was undertaken at the Surat Smart City under the aegis of India's Union Government. The flood management component of the platform was developed in alignment with the urgent needs of the city. This has 3 critical aspects: flood preparedness, monitoring, and response. These are further integrated through a WhatsApp chatbot to be used by the urban local body and concerned line departments. The other 4 aspects which will be developed further are water quality, ecological health, eco-sensitive project planning, citizen grievances, and aspirations.
There are still 2 billion people globally who lack access to safely managed drinking water, and most often, water quality is the main barrier. These challenges demand innovative solutions where artificial intelligence can offer promising opportunities.
But where can AI really make a difference? We believe most importantly, it'll be in the production of useful data. As you know, traditional water quality monitoring methods are time consuming and resource intensive. AI technologies like the sensors we are developing, along with remote sensing devices, can provide real-time data on water quality that even modern utilities struggle to produce, especially for asset performance and forecasting. So leveraging technology to produce water quality data cheaply and quickly is urgent, and that's what we're doing. Furthermore, AI can derive more from the data that is available. By analyzing volumes of water quality data, algorithms can detect patterns, trends, and anomalies that may go unnoticed by human observers. The advanced analysis helps identify potential sources of pollution, predict water quality variations, and facilitate interventions. Also, AI can optimize data collection methods. With limited resources and extensive water networks, cities often struggle to gather comprehensive data on water quality. However, AI-powered techniques such as machine learning and data fusion can integrate information from various sources like satellites, sensors, and even social media. And lastly, AI can reduce the data needs while still maintaining effective monitoring. By leveraging predictive modeling and anomaly detection, algorithms can identify potential water issues before they even occur. This is a proactive approach that reduces the need for constant data collection, that results in cost savings and more sustainable and resilience management. The question now is, who is this truly useful for? We believe that at the regional catchment level, these types of tools can be game-changing, especially if operators on the ground have access, perhaps from a regional centralized source. The challenge now really is on the hands of developers and people alike.
We stack these little boxes together like Legos inside a shipping container, which can go anywhere in the world, transport on a truck or a train or a ship, and plug and play to provide sanitation and ideally access to treated water anywhere in the world. And you don't need sewer grid and you don't need an energy grid. So we're out in the world commercially on the industrial sector. And the goal is to take what we've done there, drive down our cost of goods even more, and then make this technology in its current iteration just as accessible into other markets and ultimately into sanitation. A professor came to give a talk to our department, and he was from biology, and he came in and he started talking about how bacteria have this capacity for breathing rocks and generating electricity, and it just blew my mind.
to act as the nerve center.
Wherever. So we're out in the world commercially on the industrial sector. And the goal is to take what we've done there, drive down our cost of goods even more, and then make
Welcome, Kati.
Thank you. Thank you. So, all this goes to show if anything, we are quite adaptable as a community. And I'll take the slides as while they're still working. Okay, so what I'll start with is just to reintroduce that we're all very, very familiar with. And this is just a schematic that I borrowed from this website, Visual Capitalist. And so the bottom line here is, if we are taking a look at let's say some kind of beginning here in terms of temperatures, in terms of precipitation, in terms of lack of water, essentially the point here is that the extremes have been amplifying over time. That's something that we're well familiar with. Perhaps we don't have a very good handle on them, but at least this is something that we are experiencing more and more and more. And these are snapshots from just yesterday in terms of what is happening in the southern part of California, which is I would say entirely uncharacteristic, perhaps has not happened in recent memory. And again, the point here is we just don't have a handle on how to address or even what to expect anymore. And the point here is when we talk about this directed movement towards cities, towards urban centers, the impacts are actually being amplified and multiplied as well. So it's not just in terms of increased precipitation, it's also on the other side with going to the other end of the spectrum with precipitation. And this is from the neighborhood I'm impacted by the fires up in California, and then increased temperatures also essentially disrupting even traffic in some cities more and more so. The point here is all of these externalities, all of these disturbances get amplified because of the pressure cooker that we associate with dense urban communities, populations. There are other aspects as well that are relatively less understood, relatively less studied. We have a good idea in terms of what climate-related variability does in terms of human health threats, primarily as it deals with the life cycle of pathogens, as it deals with the life cycle of vectors associated with the spread of human disease. So this is something that we have very little idea, very little definition in terms of what is happening, how we can handle this. Greenhouse gas emissions, I think in the snippets of the videos we saw, there is indeed a link between climate and its impacts on the water infrastructure, water sanitation infrastructure, but also in terms of the emissions that arise from the water and the sanitation sector as well. This is a direction that my group actually started working on, opening up the box, so to speak, in 2006, 2007. This is the original publication that came out based on that study. About 9 years later, the IPCC has included some of this data into this one graph, essentially something that looks like a straight line, relating the emissions of nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas about 300 times as bad as CO2, as a function of the strength of the wastewater. So essentially, the bottom line here is if we do not treat this wastewater, just the nitrogenous part of that wastewater will give rise to an emission depending on what the loading is. And then we have the carbon, of course, and then there are some other constituents as well. So this is just the nitrogen part. And again, this, if you look at let's say a pipe that puts out this much nitrogen, and we can talk about the carbon as well, in which methane becomes the interesting aspect here. If we talk about a city, we have a pipe this is the amount of emission that we can expect from that pipe based on no treatment. And then, of course, we can start to take a look at what happens as we progressively reduce that load by virtue of treatment. I've not come up with a single solution yet. I'm just okay. So then we need frameworks, and there are many, many frameworks. The SDG provide a beautiful framework. This is another one that I had the good fortune of working on as well. In the US, this came out of the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. And so we were tasked with coming up with the 5 big ones. This was prior to the recent pandemic. And these are the 5 we came up with, but the key words here, some of the key words here include interconnected challenges. And then if we take a look at all of these, we can pretty much take the scenario of cities, urban communities, and essentially identify each or associate every one of these challenges with an urban community as well, with that additional term that I heard that I wish I had used, acceleration. So the amplification, the intensification that we feel when we talk about urban communities. So then, all right, so then what do we do? If we have a framework, one of the first things to understand is that many of these challenges are connected. And it's not a simple addition, it's multiplication or even more, raising to a power function, which in some ways amplifies the problem. But then the question here is, can we take the amplification phenomenon or the acceleration phenomenon and use it to our benefit? If the challenges are getting amplified, but potentially then maybe the solutions that we come up with could also be amplified when we are let's say linking them to these communities. So what can we do? I'll just give you a few examples. This is from again this is from one of the many buildings in New York City where there is the possibility of water reuse, urban water reuse. This is in a neighborhood all the way at the southernmost tip of Manhattan, one of many buildings. And in this specific building, the sewage is not allowed to go out. The untreated sewage is not allowed to go out of the boundary of the building. Now, let's for a moment consider what this does. The moment we kind of put boundaries around these streams, we are essentially we're protecting them from the variability that they would be subjected to if they were to leave the boundary. Yes, in a sewer, but then arriving at a wastewater treatment plant and all that variability. So that is taken out of the equation now. We have talked about scaling, and I'm sure there are some engineers. I'm an engineer also. We sometimes think it is very, very good to design the biggest system that can exist, and that's fine. I've been guilty of doing so myself in many cities. I've designed wastewater treatment plants in many cities, but I think now the biggest challenge is when we talk about dense urban communities, it's not how big can we go, it's how small can we go and make these systems viable economically, technically, and technologically. I think that's the challenge here. And so when we talk about scaling, we don't have to have one big system. It's not scale up in that sense. It's many multiple systems, let's say a smaller sized system. So the impact is still there. The scale of the impact is still there, but the systems are all quite small. It's not a volumetric scale down. So I don't mean that we just we take a big pipe and then chop it up and have many parallel systems. It's not that. We are talking about sewage streams sewage streams which are not diluted. Just consider this for a moment. Our human bodies produce about 2 to 3 liters per capita per day of urine and fecal matter. We dilute these streams often by a factor of 100, depending what we use and what else we use, okay? And that's the stream that ends up in a wastewater treatment plant. That's the stream that is then subjected to all this variability. Imagine for that for just a moment, taking out that 100-fold dilution. This is the stream that we are now dealing with. So that's the scale down. Then we can talk about taking these streams and doing something innovative like this. This is still a volumetric scale down, but the point here is we have an opportunity to do much, much more. Even with the volumetric scale down, this building and many buildings like this are able to achieve about 55% reduction in their water demands. And so this is possible. For the systems, for the communities, for the cities that are not saddled with legacy infrastructure, where there is nothing, this is an opportunity. Instead of designing the big wastewater treatment plant and maybe forgetting to put the sewers in place, perhaps there's an opportunity here to do much, much more. And again, we don't have to sit at either end of the pendulum here. It could be very much an integrated system where we have non-sewered and sewered. And non-sewered doesn't mean just fecal matter. Non-sewered could mean anything. It could be a mixture of water, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and solids. So if we take this collectively, we can start to figure out what goes where, and that's the opportunity here. Impose the limitation of, not the limitation, the opportunity of small volume systems. That's an amplification factor. We are working on a project right now with different cities around the world. The point here is just this. I'm plotting here the annual average dollars per person per year as a function of efficiency of treatment. And so what I did here was for one of the municipalities in a big Asian city, we basically started to take away some of the carbon, and the nitrogen and phosphorus was still going in. So this could represent a system where there is solid separation, where the organic matter or the food waste is not going down into the sink. But maybe you get the picture, right? And so as we start to take away some of the load, yes, the energy also actually goes down. This is normalized to per capita as well. So the energy requirement goes down without optimizing the centralized process. Now, if we start to optimize this, this is where we are going. So the efficiency is getting amplified, is getting accelerated, it's getting multiplied. So there's a lot of opportunity here. It's not on a straight line. It's not volumetric. It's a jump that we can achieve. That's the opportunity. Food. I gave you a framework. There were 5 challenges: food, climate, water, energy, and so on. Where is the connection to food? This is actually on my own university campus, where we take food waste, not combined with sewage, not diluted, but we take the food waste, we convert selectively the carbon to energy, the nitrogen and phosphorus goes back onto the land. So for us, it's the food waste back to food. Small scale, but still something. And there are other cities in that part of the world which are also starting to come on board as well. What else is there in waste? What else can we do in dense urban communities? If the current pandemic has taught us the value of wastewater sewage-based surveillance, we have taken it quite a bit further, not just in terms of sewage monitoring at wastewater treatment plants, but in university buildings, in other facilities as well. That's the other advantage we have. When we have a community living in close proximity, it becomes less of a challenge to get an idea of the overall community health. And that's the other opportunity that we have. All of this is embedded in the so-called waste streams that we are generating. So I'll just leave you all with a simple message. Perhaps there's still time to go deeper during the panel discussion. What I would just reiterate are these 2 points. So scaling down, I think that is something that we really have to open up. Scaling down, not volumetrically, and let's try and see what other multiplicative factors there are. Not just let's not go down in a straight line or go up in a straight line. Let's try and see where the jumps are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kartik, for the keynote address. Moving on, we will now have Todd Gardner. Todd Gardner is with the World Resources Institute. He's the director of the Cities for Forest team. Todd is going to help us to facilitate the conversation around some of the innovations we are seeing in the city's water and climate space, as well as facilitate a conversation with enablers in the space of policy, finance, as well as industry in that space. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Amanda, and good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good, good. Lunch smells good. Yeah. Excellent. So we're going to take a little bit of a different approach for the next part of this panel here. From our setting the stage and our keynote, we heard about some critical ideas, how we trend towards optimization when we think about water and climate resilience in cities. But we want to understand what this looks like on the ground. what does this look like with our innovators who are actually putting this into practice? And assuming the technology gods are on our side here, we're going to go about that by looking at some micro videos. We're going to look at 7 about 2-minute videos divided into the themes of data and technology innovation, policy, and finance. And we have, fortunately, some of the authors and creators of these videos here, which we'll introduce after we run through the first couple of videos. We put an RFP out to get ideas of what these case studies might look like and got 48 abstracts back. And we picked 7 winners from that cohort and are really excited to share that with you now. Please see innovation in action.
To act as the nerve center for the rapidly urbanizing city, India Smart Cities Mission has set up integrated command and control centers. Already operationalized in 76 cities across the country, ICCCs are receiving real-time data from different sources to address the urban challenges across multiple domains. This information is being processed and analyzed to build situational awareness and decide on any necessary action. Having dramatically improved service delivery and active grievance systems throughout the city, ICCCs are now scaling up to diagnostic and prescriptive analysis, which is currently in nascent stages. Team Connect aims to establish a rapid collaboration system to jumpstart the ICCC's move to its next level of benefits to all city stakeholders while maximizing its potential. The Connect plugin will rapidly relay on-demand actionable outputs to the citizens and line departments, while also facilitating the move towards diagnostic and prescriptive analytics. The Connect plugin offers a 4-part process to address complex urban challenges. Identify, defining the parts of the complex issue, engage, involving citizens and departments in understanding the parts, diagnose, correlating these parts to obtain insights, and finally, collaborate, converting and conveying the insights as actionable output.
The pilot on urban water resilience was undertaken at the Surat Smart City under the aegis of India's Union Government. The flood management component of the platform was developed in alignment with the urgent needs of the city. This has 3 critical aspects: flood preparedness, monitoring, and response. These are further integrated through a WhatsApp chatbot to be used by the urban local body and concerned line departments. The other 4 aspects which will be developed further are water quality, ecological health, eco-sensitive project planning, citizen grievances, and aspirations.
There are still 2 billion people globally who lack access to safely managed drinking water, and most often, water quality is the main barrier. These challenges demand innovative solutions where artificial intelligence can offer promising opportunities.
But where can AI really make a difference? We believe most importantly, it'll be in the production of useful data. As you know, traditional water quality monitoring methods are time consuming and resource intensive. AI technologies like the sensors we are developing, along with remote sensing devices, can provide real-time data on water quality that even modern utilities struggle to produce, especially for asset performance and forecasting. So leveraging technology to produce water quality data cheaply and quickly is urgent, and that's what we're doing. Furthermore, AI can derive more from the data that is available. By analyzing volumes of water quality data, algorithms can detect patterns, trends, and anomalies that may go unnoticed by human observers. The advanced analysis helps identify potential sources of pollution, predict water quality variations, and facilitate interventions. Also, AI can optimize data collection methods. With limited resources and extensive water networks, cities often struggle to gather comprehensive data on water quality. However, AI-powered techniques such as machine learning and data fusion can integrate information from various sources like satellites, sensors, and even social media. And lastly, AI can reduce the data needs while still maintaining effective monitoring. By leveraging predictive modeling and anomaly detection, algorithms can identify potential water issues before they even occur. This is a proactive approach that reduces the need for constant data collection, that results in cost savings and more sustainable and resilience management. The question now is, who is this truly useful for? We believe that at the regional catchment level, these types of tools can be game-changing, especially if operators on the ground have access, perhaps from a regional centralized source. The challenge now really is on the hands of developers and people like us at Advanced Water Testing in trying to make these tools available and easily to adopt.
We at Advanced Water Testing hope to connect two really important themes, that of innovation and the voices of youth. We believe that the voices of youth will be essential to bring new perspectives, to innovate new tools and solutions, but also to push the urgency of water quality issues. We hope to equip those at the front lines of climate adaptation with the right tools.
We stack these little boxes together like Legos inside a shipping container, which can go anywhere in the world, transport on a truck or a train or a ship, and plug and play to provide sanitation and ideally access to treated water anywhere in the world. And you don't need a sewer grid and you don't need an energy grid. So we're out in the world commercially on the industrial sector. And the goal is to take what we've done there, drive down our cost of goods even more, and then make this technology in its current iteration just as accessible into other markets and ultimately into sanitation. A professor came to give a talk to our department, and he was from biology, and he came in and he started talking about how bacteria have this capacity for breathing rocks and generating electricity, and it just blew my mind.
That was excellent. I love that last line. Entrepreneurship and innovation will drive water security. I know we have a few of those creators and authors in the room. Shaira Chahun, Jose Castro, Sofia Babanova. If any of you are here, please stand and recognize yourselves. Excellent. Well, data, technology, innovation is only as good as we can integrate into the policy process. We're now going to hear some cases from the ground where that has actually happened.
According to the United Nations, if current trends continue, 2/3 of the world's population could be subject to water stress. How much water is stored in that basin, and when will it become available? This is the question that water utilities are asking to comply with water supply. However, global warming has changed the pattern of water availability, making historical data obsolete and current procedures inefficient. The need of a new management system, customizable for specific configuration, is becoming very urgent. WaterJade is a new technology that provides updated information essential to the decision-making process. WaterJade processes big data obtained from different sources, such as in situ stations, satellite images, and numerical weather predictions. Then feeds a modeling chain combining artificial intelligence and physically based models. The results are an accurate prediction of water inflow, thus improving subsequent decisions.
Thank you so much. If either Elias Macherius or Matteo Dal Amico are in the room, please stand and be recognized. Thank you so much. Great. And I love that line, water managers and policymakers coming together to deal with drought. But as we all know, policy alone is not enough. It takes funding and finance. And that is a core theme of innovation. And we're now going to see a couple of videos focused on that exact topic.
In rural Mali, we had the opportunity to explore the effects of solar kiosks for drinking water supplies across 15 locations. In collaboration with Uduma, a professional service provider, we track how upgrading a manual pump to a solar kiosk affects water use and revenue generation over time. We apply an interrupted time series design to more than 450 months of water use and payment data to model the effects of this infrastructure upgrade. Across 3 consecutive hot and wet seasons, our study shows that solar kiosks do not significantly increase water use. Instead, water demand is subject to seasonal dynamics. Regarding monthly revenues, however, you find that on average, solar kiosks generate 4 times more revenue. Since water demand across the infrastructures is similar, we were wondering what drives the improved financial performance of solar kiosks. To better understand this, I conducted fieldwork in Mali. It appears that solar kiosks are better able to unlock user payments. Anecdotal evidence helps to illustrate this. As a user stated, With a solar kiosk, it is really easy. You pay, you get the water, and you leave after only 1 minute or so. But with the hand pump, you had to work hard, and this for the same price. Based on our research, we propose to nuance some policy assumptions associated with infrastructure. While revenues do increase when hand pumps are upgraded to solar kiosks, seasonal volatility in water demand indicates that solar kiosks are not a definitive solution to the highly contextual and dynamic nature of water use behaviors in rural Africa. Furthermore, solar kiosks may contribute to more climate resilient water supplies in periods of peaks in water demand. However, this requires that infrastructure is managed for resilience. Therefore, we propose coupling infrastructure investments with professional service provision.
And if Jason Lopez and Johannes Wagner in the room, please stand to be recognized. Thank you so much. So a huge thanks and congratulations to all of our creators and authors. Wonderful job. And we're now going to continue with a panel discussion to dig even deeper on these ideas of technology innovation, policy, and finance entrepreneurship and innovation. And so I'd like to invite the final panelists up to the stage. Hamid Asafer, Head of Asset Management at Invesco. Sridhar Sampath, Director of Infrastructure Investments at waterequitywater.org. It's going to be on the screen behind us, great. Martin Gilser, Senior Water Advisor, Inclusive Green Growth Department, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Netherlands. Tom Molenkamp, the President of International Water Association. And finally, we're fortunate to have our keynote speaker from Colombia join us as well, Desing Naidu. I lied. The gentleman who gave the opening remarks, Qatar, is going to join us remotely as well. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Those were some excellent videos that we saw, and we'd love to get your perspective coming from the finance, policy, data, and technology innovation space. I'd love for each of you to take maybe 3 to 4 minutes and just give some opening remarks around the opportunities and challenges that you see in front of us and the way ahead to ultimately take these ideas and drive them into scalable impacts. Please.
Thank you very much, Todd, and thanks everyone for organizing such an insightful event. My name is Hamid Asifar. I work for Invesco Asset Management, and among other things, we are trying to bring to market a climate adaptation blended finance fund, which we hope would help close the funding gap that's needed to address some of the challenges we are talking about today. Water, we are in a water event, so I probably should talk a little bit about water and how interconnected, as Professor Kartik has mentioned before, to other sectors, healthcare, agriculture, and energy production, right? For us, as an asset manager, we want to make sure that institutional capital is used alongside other public funding, right, to bring to market some commercially viable solutions to have some exposure to those sectors, water, agriculture, nature-based solutions, etc. From what I've seen today, there are innovations in the technology space, some projects as well. But what I recognized is the majority of those projects are implemented by SMEs, small, medium enterprises or micro enterprises. And when we've done our analysis and spoke to a lot of entrepreneurs, what we found is the ideas are fantastic, but then you need to have a sound business model. You need to have an impact, right? Like indicators. Accountability is key for us to get some long-term funding. Those companies are perceived to be high risk, right? If we are talking about challenges. And for us as an investment manager, we have the ability to financial engineer, right? Like innovation could be also in the financial sector. We are experts in that field, so we can help those companies, give some strategic guidance to address some of the challenges that they face to raise capital. But when you think about institutional investors and when they want to buy those type of projects, they need funds, right? And the fund needs to have certain criteria. Like public financial institutions, they have a lot of criteria that makes already constraints a little bit tough to bring something to market. But for us, we can be able to blend and innovate to bring some commercially viable and risk-adjusted structures. And we can access the water sector alongside other sectors. A diversified approach is key, right, for investors. They want to access water, but also other agriculture technologies, etc., nature-based solutions to help accelerate and close that funding gap that's needed. I'm not sure what I should add. Should I?
I think that's a great spot to leave it for now, and we'll come back, especially on that commercialization piece. I definitely want to tap into that. Martin, maybe I'll come to you next, and then ultimately to the screen. We heard from the private sector investment side. You work on the public sector. If you could compare and contrast in your role in helping create innovation in the financial sector while thinking about policy and innovation.
Yeah, I'm going to really take you down to base level. So I want to say something about an urban resilience program that we've been involved in for the past 12 years in the city of Beira in Mozambique, front line of climate change. So this is a city of 600,000 people, has a budget of 10 million per year. The city of Rotterdam has a similar population, has a budget of 4.5 billion, 300 times. So we're talking really what is there in terms of capacity. We live in a project cycle, 3 years, 4 years. In Beira, we said in 2011, we're going to accompany you for the process of 15 years. And we were going to solve water problems. We had our fishing rod, fishing for water problems, and we caught one fish. It was not really a water problem, caught another fish, not a water problem, throw it back. Finally, we found a water problem, but we were wondering, are we going to satisfy ourselves, solving water problems in a city where everything is connected with everything, where all these transitions have to happen simultaneously, or are we going to help the city find partners to resolve all of their challenges? And water is related to housing, is related to waste, is related to property titles, is related to obviously service delivery of a city, is related to taxation, is related to everything. So we started to develop, we went out of our water bubble and very out of our comfort zone. And with some of these things, we could help the city through other funding lines that we have, but also by connecting with other partners and sort of trying to connect everything with everything. And that's incredibly difficult, in particular in a city where 30% is formal, but 70% is informal. And we really have no clue as a European donor how to really relate to that informal sector. So we've built relationships in the city with communities, but also what happens in a city in Africa is not determined by the city alone. It's also determined by the central level government. So there's this subsidiarity, and it's great subsidiarity, but usually the levels do not communicate very well. So we also supported a process of connecting those levels from the city to the central government, but also from the central government to the local level. It's basically a piece of a puzzle of 1,000 pieces. And we as a donor, we're always focused on our one wonderful piece of the puzzle that we throw on the table somewhere in that urban space. But we don't really support a puzzle master to put all the pieces together. We're not really concerned about all those other pieces that some others are bringing. And so our process has shifted from look at what a beautiful piece we're putting on the table here to how can we help the city as the only legitimate puzzle master in this space put all the pieces together.
That's great. And I love the idea of the puzzle master. And maybe turning to our remote colleague, I'd love for you to help us understand, Sridhar, how waterequitywater.org fits into that big puzzle. How do you connect these pieces around water infrastructure, equity, and community resilience?
Sure, thanks. I just want to give a brief background about what we do in water equity in water.org. Water Equity is an impact investment fund manager focused on water and sanitation. So far, we have focused on household access to safe water and safely managed sanitation in emerging markets through small ticket retail loans routed via financial institutions. But now, our new strategy is to invest into the supply side of water and sanitation infrastructure in emerging markets. We're looking to invest across the water value chain, sourcing of water, treatment of water, and distribution of water, as well as collection and treatment of wastewater and reuse of wastewater. When we're doing this, we're looking to invest into two types of opportunities. Number one, project special purpose vehicles that are basically companies that are set up to build and operate BOTs and concessions. And number two, invest into growth companies that provide products, technologies, and solutions to the water sector. Now, by doing this, by going through this twin track investment strategy, we're able to reach a lot more people with impact than we would be able to do with only one strategy. Now, in this, there are two pieces which are important to our investment. The first is climate resilience, which is a key theme that underpins our investment strategy. So while investing, we will assess and minimize climate-related risks, build community resilience to climate change, and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. And the other piece is the impact piece. We have three impact themes: access, quality, and scarcity. And each of our investments must satisfy one of these impact themes. So that's just to give all a background about what we do. Now, we work very closely with our sister organization, water.org, which provides grant-funded technical assistance, for basically capacity building and so on and so forth. So, you talked about innovation. Now, the challenge with innovation is often companies that come up with innovations are very small, and they need to prove their products or services before it's accepted commercially. And that's where I think we come in. Our sister organization, water.org, has the ability to provide technical assistance for project development in projects. For example, by supporting feasibility studies, water availability studies, environment impact assessments, detail engineering, financial structuring, and so on. A lot more, support is available. I'm not listing all of them here. That's on project side. But when it comes to growth companies that are innovative, there's a lot of support that comes in from water.org. For example, they can support pilot studies for scaling up of their technology, pilot studies for testing new markets. Maybe there's a business that's doing well in one market, but you got to understand new requirements in other markets. So basically support pilot studies in other markets so that one can expand and have differentiated offering in different markets. Apart from this, water.org also supports market studies, technology studies, and training of people. So all these work together basically to offer a solution whereby water equity offers capital in the form of equity, mezzanine, and debt. And on the other hand, water.org provides capacity building through both grant funded and through, let's say, risk capital funded technical assistance. So I think there's a solution for innovative companies. Thank you.
And I appreciate your focus there on the innovation, the piloting, the capacity building, the TA. That's a critical piece. And I think that leads in nicely to Tom at IWA. How do you think about your organization driving the enabling conditions and policy environment so we really can see the scale and resilience that we're looking for in cities?
Thanks, Todd, for this, and thanks to WRI, and thank you to you all for being here, because we've heard a lot over the last many years about the problems. And we all know that the definition of insanity is to do the same thing again and again and expect to get a different result. So we know that business as usual is not an option. So we're here to talk about what are we going to change to make some impact. The International Water Association, as a membership association for people and organisations in the sector, is vitally interested in what you were talking about, Todd, and that is what's the environment, what's the climate that is going to foster innovation, and we very often jump immediately to funding. You know, I can innovate, I just need more money, but I think there's a step before that, and that's about culture. Now, innovation and water is a tough ask because we know that the water sector is incredibly conservative, rightfully so in many respects. We're dealing with human health, we're dealing with big environmental issues, but sometimes I wonder whether we've taken our risk aversity just a little too far. Culturally, we're going to have to open up a little bit. So I thought I'd just explore a couple of things that are, as they say, potentially impediments, but dealt with are ways that we can innovate and we can see the change that we need. I want to start with the idea, though, that when it comes to solutions, there is no they. Very often we hear someone say, yeah, that's a problem. They ought to do whatever. There is no they. There is only us. We need to take the action. So that is the people in this room, the people that we work with and that we work for. The second thing is that I talked about risk and culture and what we need if we're going to see innovation is we've got to accept that there will be failure. Now, we don't want to see failure resulting in death or serious illness, but there are a lot of things that we can do in industry that take some risks that is non-fatal if it goes wrong. And we know that if we're going to try and come up with new approaches, stuff will go wrong. So corporately and for us as leaders, we have to be prepared to let go a little bit, let our people start to come forward with their crazy creative ideas, and maybe they won't work, but we know that some of them will, and that's where the dividend is going to be. So a little bit of letting go, a little bit of granting permission. That's, I think, our role as leaders. The other big thing from an environmental perspective and an environment, a culture of innovation is the policy environment. Industry abhors a lack of certainty. As an industry player, as a potential investor, you don't want to be putting your energy and your funding into projects where you're not sure whether, because of political vagaries or the madness of regulators, that there's going to be a preparedness to accept. So we've got to provide some regulatory and some policy certainty to players. Regulators too can be either facilitators, enablers, or they can be impediments to change. I've seen examples with the Environment Protection Agency, the Environment Agency in the UK, setting particular standards, but they don't bother to talk to the pricing regulator to see whether that's going to be funded. So what's the point of setting increasing expectations or driving down a path where your regulator across the road in Whitehall is not going to allow that that investment to be recouped? I've also seen examples in Australia where the environmental regulator stipulates that its preferred approach on treated wastewater is to see disposal to land, that is, reuse on land. And during a period of incredible drought, Where the real need was for a return of treated wastewater for environmental flows to sustain. So what we're seeing is prescriptive environmental regulations that are inhibiting rational, otherwise rational outcomes. A flexible regulator can actually allow a situation where utilities industry can go out, come up with new technologies, come up with new approaches, or they can specify things to such a prescriptive degree. There is only one technical solution. There is only one practical approach. And the last thing I'll mention is that collaboration is queen or king. But and by that, I think about the Netherlands, for example, but also Singapore, Denmark, are all exemplars where you have high degrees of collaboration between utilities, between technology suppliers and equipment manufacturers, between research institutes and government. That opportunity to take those embryonic ideas, to talk them through with the areas where they're going to be utilised, then to move them quickly from the research, the development, to the test phase, and ultimately to implementation. I think there's some great opportunities. I think that we can all have a role in that. So don't leave it to someone else. Let's us agitate for it now.
I love that. Don't leave it to someone else. I also love the collaboration, culture, and flexibility themes that you brought up, and letting things go. I think that's good life advice in general. So our last panelist, coming back to our keynote guest here, help us tie these pieces together before we open it up for questions and answers.
Okay, that's very difficult to do. I'll try. So water is a good connector. We of course consume pure water for different objectives, but then we also use the same water to carry our waste as well. So I think and that's where the connectivity lies, and I think that's what we need to be addressing. So we can talk under the purview of water climate health, water climate sanitation health, but I think what we should stop doing is we should really stop this relentless pursuit of just clean water at any cost, maybe driven by regulation, maybe by other objectives. I think that we need to stop doing that, because then we end up making more mistakes. Let's say increased greenhouse gas emissions because of inappropriate technologies. But then I myself have seen, as probably many of you have also, just this force fitting of technologies into places where they don't fit, and very often that's a result of not taking into account the needs, and that's where I think some justice related frameworks will also be important, and that's something we have not discussed. At least today I heard that was discussed previously. So I think we need to take into account what the communities need, what is appropriate for them culturally, contextually. All of that needs to come in as well. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer in terms of how to connect everything together, but at the very least, what I could do is share, or at least emphasize that, let's say, assuming that all of us are water professionals or water related professionals, maybe not go into a setting where with a single-minded pursuit of solving the water problem. Let's understand the context in which that water problem exists, or challenges exist, and try and collaboratively frame the questions first, and then see if there are solutions possible.
That's perfect. No, I appreciate that. You've been a resilient audience, so we now want to pass the mic to you and have you ask questions of our esteemed panelists. So please, anyone, feel free just to raise your hand and we'll pass a mic around. Don't be shy. In the back. And if you wouldn't mind just quickly introducing yourself, your name and organization.
Yes, good morning. My name is Joost. I work for the Public Utility of Amsterdam. Before this, I used to work in the Public Utility of Nairobi. We had a partnership. And I have a question to Thomas. I really like how you say if we want to stir innovation, we are sometimes being too conservative as a water sector, and we need to also acknowledge our failures. And I really like the concept of like anti-fragility. Like every time you fail, you become stronger. Like in the Netherlands, we have very famous dikes, but they were only built after the country was flooded. So now I wanted to ask you if do we talk also enough about our failures? Do you think that we can learn as a sector from each other what went wrong? And how can we maybe have that conversation more? Do you think that would help?
Amanda, we have the mic back up here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I suppose I was initially thinking about failure in the sense of accepting failure internally, but you're right, it goes another step, and that is we have to be prepared to embrace it and to share it. Interestingly, I think this is a fantastic opportunity in terms of credibility. I don't know about you, but every time I see a corporate presentation and everything is glowing and warm and fuzzy, and I think, you know, that's BS. I mean, really, that you can't have done everything 100% right 100% of the time. And so, great, I love to see what you've done well, but we also deserve to know about, well, what went wrong and what did you learn from it? And the converse of that is that there's a fantastic example in Australia, a utility called Yarra Valley Water, where they have made a practice of talking about, of coming out openly when there's been a system failure or something has gone wrong. And they've done what the PR professionals tell you is the first thing you do, is you own up to it, you own the problem, and then you say, and what have I done to fix it? What that does is multiple things. One, I think it gives real credibility. But two, I think that it also brings the opportunity to share the problem, to learn from others. I think I have another kind of water-related example, and that is a local swimming pool near me has a big water slide, and it was having a problem spitting little children out too fast at the end, which is not a good look. But they were hunting around. Well, what's the problem here? And in the end, the problem was quite simple. There was fluctuations in the pump that were causing too much water to flow through at some points. And this had happened in other places around the world, but nobody had ever shared that. And so no one had learnt from it. That seems to me to be another definition of crazy.
Thank you so much. Others in the room, please, sir.
Hello, my name is Kai Zimmermann. I'm a founder of an NGO part of my time, and also a sustainability manager of a thermic group in Germany. And my question is, goes to the minister, because in Europe we have a high water consumption, and we saw the example from the New York building, I believe, where technique allow us to use and reuse water in the building a lot. So the question is, does the European Union, for example, have to make rules for small, big-size building to strange the water reuse inside the buildings?
Martin, I believe that may be to you. Oof. Is that the sound of the water slide that comes in?
Yeah, my pump is sort of fluctuating there. I think I think it would, I mean, it's strange that so much of perfect drinking water quality water is used for strange purposes, and then it's a sort of linear system where you know, water gets, and we see that across the world, water gets pumped from ever farther away to the city. It's used once and then it's pumped out as fast as possible. I mean, circularity is definitely a must, and absolutely there will be these sort of regulatory instruments to be, you know, to promote that. I don't know where it starts. I mean, it probably will start with developing technologies first and then eventually building codes change. I have no clue if the EU should do that and when, but I mean, to promote circularity, absolutely.
We probably have time for 2 more questions. Please, in the back.
Use instead of water to carry waste at this moment?
I'll turn it back to you. I know some nice examples from South Africa itself, which are being developed under the WRC umbrella. I'm not sure that they are, I don't know that they are out on the market yet. I'll also yield to the temptation of mentioning vacuum systems. They don't always work very well. But there are examples, as I said, developed with the WRC, by the WRC in conjunction with their partners, where the volume used is a fraction of a liter. So I think they were down to a few hundred milliliters, about 200 to 500 milliliters per flush. But again, that's not drinking quality water. So that's to my knowledge where we are. Instead of 3.8 liters a flush, it's 200 milliliters per flush, 200 to 500 milliliters of non-potable water. So there's vacuum for sure, but that also it's not straightforward. Yeah, vacuum works. It works in many cases. It doesn't also work in other cases, and that's where I think we need to kind of parse through the 2 streams, let's say, that the human body produces. So we're producing around 1.5 liters per day per capita of urine, which is nearly sterile, has nitrogen, phosphorus, and some other pharmaceuticals, and then the fecal matter that needs to be carried. So that's where I think if we are able to work creatively, we can make some dents.
If I may turn to you for just a second in our last few minutes, commercialization. We hear a lot about crowding in private sector money to complement public and philanthropic funds. It requires a strong business case. For project developers and water managers, what are the 1 to 2 most important things when trying to articulate that business case to investors?
Yeah, I think probably we should leave with some positive notes, right? And some hope. So when we've been discussing with companies and SMEs in the water sector, but also in climate adaptation in general, what we've been asking them for is better business cases, right? Like we need revenue streams and cash flows well-defined and clear. We need viable business models, right? We can go down market, right, in terms of risk. So you can buy debt from like a micro or small, medium enterprise. And there are tools out there, right? This is the good news. So you have like the GSS plus bond market, like the majority of institutional investors, they have some exposure to the 4 trillion green and sustainable social debt market, right? And I'd like entrepreneurs to think about like what type of instruments that they would like. Is it equity? Is it debt? If it's debt, what type of sectors do they operate within, right? And then try and find the right like buying partners like on the asset management segment. So you have impact funds. Impact funds are a blend of like commercial viability, but also impact indicators. We need to see impact indicators and accountability after year 1, year 2, etc. Because that's what's sustainable, right? Like we're also looking for solutions that are scalable. I think in one of the videos, there was a presentation about the technology, and one of the founders was talking about we want to deploy this technology elsewhere, right? So that's the technical assistance like role. So technical assistance can help like that company and that entrepreneur to take the technology elsewhere, right? And there is a need for collaboration between government, the private sector, organizations like WRI and others, right, to make sure that like people and communities that know that there is a solution for their adaptation need, right? In terms of the type of funding for climate adaptation in general, it needs to be long-term to see that impact happening. I know that the private sector sometimes is criticized about not being patient, and they want results immediately. But believe me, there are solutions out there. There are funds, close-ended funds with long tenor, and they can provide the type of financing needed. Just need to have the right pitch, right, and the right connections with those guys that could provide this type of funding. One last point I would say is around data. I think for us as well, we need to have the ability to analyze complex projects in the water sector in climate adaptation. And I've seen one of the data like projects leveraging like satellite imagery, etc. This is kind of the things that we want to see. But data also that will help you report back to investors is key, right? There are a lot of challenges around taxonomy and standardization of information disclosure to investors. And we need to see more of that. And we hope that technical assistance and the collaboration between the private and public will help us address those issues.
Okay. Absolutely brilliant. I'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much to our panelists, both online and in person. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Todd, for facilitating that discussion between showing the innovations on the ground as well as exploring what the enabling environment looks like. We will then connect to Desigan, who started us off, to help us summarize before handing over to Roger to paint the way forward to COP28. Over to you, Desigan.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you everyone for a really incredible session. A special shout out to the folk who were online, the 50 or so folk that managed to continue a conversation even while you were reorganizing yourself around your fire alarm. And I guess we had a very real expression of very quick adaptation to new circumstances to continue the chat. I can't offer a summary of everything that happened. So I'm going to pull out 5, I think, pillar points that we can take away from this conversation, in addition to the many others that you're going to be taking away as well. And just really congratulate everyone for a remarkable set of presentations. And those videos were pretty inspiring. And I think gives us a view of what the future might hold if we make the right kinds of investments. So the 5 points look like this. The first is that we seem to have a train of locomotives to drive the change, and the change that we need to see. And those locomotives look like this. I mean, the first engine is the primacy of the urban environment. And the urban environment is looked upon globally, particularly in the context of climate change, but even beyond climate change, as the engine that will change the fortunes of countries and change the fortunes of regions in the world. The second is something that the water sector has been punting for the longest time. Hopefully, some people are starting to believe us, that within that, water is a very genuine instrument for change. The nature of its connectivity, the fact that it intersects and usually empowers every facet of human life and development, is something that needs a much higher level of investment. That water and its availability to be a genuine engine for socioeconomic development, if we organize for the right kind of connections and the right kinds of nexes in that approach, will be that second locomotive. And the third is the climate emergency, the current climate emergency. And all the data is saying that this climate emergency is getting worse very rapidly as a core driver for growth. So those three engines, those three locomotives in tandem can pull along a very significant global change that we all want to see. The second point to pull out, and we saw this all over the program today, is that we have a scatter of very successful case studies and interventions all over the world. In our own experiences as water practitioners, we also have another list of less successful examples. The problem that we have is that with every intervention, we start relearning that all over again. We're not building on the existing knowledge that we have. And one of the things that we really need to invest in is an information sharing platform, a learning platform, where we can bring these together very rapidly, learn from them, and then work out the next set of investments and interventions that builds on the knowledge that has been gained with these experiences. The third is that we really need to reorganize our paradigm of thought. I mean, one of the things that was quite remarkable in Karthik's presentation is changing of the paradigm. The current driver is scale up. This is all we talk about, a multiplying effect, but getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When the reality is that we're looking at the world where the innovation is demanding that we get smaller and smaller, and is something that we have to reconsider. Because what we need to do in the water sector, what we're currently trying to do in the energy sector with the just energy transition in the world, what we've already learned in the mobile and communication sector, is that life needs to get smaller for people to be more empowered to make the serious differences that we want to see. And there is insufficient investment in that inside the water sector, which is still dominated by the bigger is better approach. Well, currently the bigger is dangerous. The bigger is high carbon. The bigger is further away from people. It's not organizing for the sustainability. It's not organizing for the drive to resilience that we need. The fourth point I want to make is that we really are in need of a better engagement model for North-South relationships. I come from the Global South. I've lived all of my life in the Global South. I do most of my work in the Global South, and a lot of it is with Northern partners. And this inability to recognize that just because people are poor and under-resourced, that they have a lower appreciation of both the problem as well as the elements of solution that will make the difference is always far from true. I haven't found an exception to that. But so having a better North-South partnership model with genuine respect for local leadership in this water sector, I think is really badly needed. And some of that was reflected in the panel as well. And then the last point I want to make is this, that retrofitting the North towards a more resilient water sector, in particular a climate resilient water sector, but there are other elements of resilience that we want to have as well, is a more expensive task when compared to the global laboratory that is available for this water sector in the Global South, where you have genuine greenfields opportunities to put these new formatted solutions and innovations right off the bat, right from the scratch, and use the learning of those models so that we can have the global change that we want to see. Whether you're talking about wastewater treatment, recycling, gray water, new treatment works, non-sewage sanitation, I think we have to really organize ourselves to take advantage of the opportunities that we have in the Global South to experiment with these solutions at a reasonable scale, and then knit up the global community of practice that we want. Because a successful water sector through the nexus will mean more successful energy and food sectors, a safer environment, and almost inevitably a movement, and hopefully an irreversible movement to a lower carbon economy for the world as a whole, and definitely higher levels of climate resilience on the back of water innovations. Thank you all very much for your opportunity. Thank you to my partners in crime, in the organizing team for this seminar. Amanda, I hand back to you.
Thank you, Desigan, for setting the scene for us, as well as providing us with the concluding remarks and holding the discussion virtually while we had to take a pause. And to close us off, I would like to invite Rogier van der Berg. Rogier is the Global Director of Cities with the World Resources Institute. Rogier, we've heard a lot about water and climate in cities. We have had some of the innovation in the IT space, digital policy, finance. We've heard from our enablers. How do we keep the momentum going? And what do we take forward to COP28?
Thank you. This is the worst speaking slot. You know, I'm between you and the coffee break, so I'm very much aware. So I will be very brief. A lot has been said. There's a lot of momentum, and if we would walk all as diligently in the same direction as we did during the fire alarm, I think we can get there, right? So, but that's actually not yet the case. But I just want to make us aware, because we drilled quite deep into technology, policy change, finance, the expanded role of water. If we can really keep the momentum that water and cities have at the moment, and I see this between COP27 and COP28, there's a huge opportunity. And COP27, I would just want to sketch 3 points. The COP27 really got water at the heart of climate action. It made it to the cover text of COP27. So, I mean, for some this sounds abstract, but this is important, because this is where we negotiate. This is where we agree which direction to go together as nation states, and increasingly also as subnational authorities. So that's a momentum. This year we had the UN, the first in 50 years UN Water Conference. And I think, and thanks to the government of the Netherlands, the UN, and the government of Tajikistan, I think what happened there is that water kind of really got out of its kind of straitjacket of a sectoral thing, right? Water as a prerequisite for development. That is what I have taken away from the UN Water Conference. But also the role of cities in the water space. And that's also not necessarily a natural fit. Huh? The water sector and development has been actually operating and developing ideas and concepts and implementation mechanisms largely at the national scale. So we're doing a lot of things at the same time here. How can we drive action in cities, and how can we bring cities and water together? And how can we develop and look at water as a development opportunity? So that's the second point. Coming out of the UN Water Conference is a water action agenda. And today there is a conversation. I'm part of that conversation with the Dutch, with the organizers of the UN Water Conference, with COP28 presidency, on kind of shaping and looking at the implementation of the water agenda at COP. And where are we, and how can we accelerate action? But there's actually much more happening at COP. The COP28 presidency identified in their climate action agenda for COP28 kind of 3 different elements of the water agenda. One is the protection and restoration of freshwater ecosystems. The second is the increasing urban water resilience. So there you have urban and water together. And the third one is building water resilient food systems. So there is a kind of a water element at COP that will be presented, and many of us and you are going to be part of what's going to be delivered there. The water action agenda also presented at COP. Where are we and how to accelerate? And third, which is not important, the COP28 presidency, together with Bloomberg Philanthropies and many city organizations, will bring to COP a big splash on cities. On the second day of the first week, there will be a local climate action summit, which also pays attention to water. And this is bringing a lot of subnational leaders together in order to increase the attention to cities as implementers of the climate agenda, and as crucial for achieving 1.5 degree. The last point is on cities have always been, it's been kind of mentioned several times, cities have always been at the forefront of innovation. You know, without cities, you don't have innovation. So everything that we discussed today can be tested, implemented, and scaled in the context of cities. We also live in a very complex world where half of people love cities and the other half of cities don't like cities, right? Actually, how we look at electoral processes in any country, in Europe, in the US, the Americas, and Asia, you see a clear divide between urban and non-urban. And this is going to be a growing problem. Nevertheless, at the moment, for the city's people, and I'm an urban guy, there is a moment of potential where we can drive change through mobilizing cities and innovation in cities. And innovation, as has been said today, it's policy, it's finance, it's technology, and it's how we work together, how we govern cities in the context of national ambitions. So last point is on cities are not the same everywhere, and the water challenge is very different in Africa, in India, in Mexico, and Indonesia. And cities can't be seen separated from their context, right? Cities operate in their regions, in their basins. So this is where our sectors come together, and I look really forward to push both agendas, and most importantly, to bring both agendas together. And that is up to us to do that and to kind of push those that combined agenda, including the aspects of innovation that we talked today at COP28. And I hope to see you there. But so far, we still have a lot of work to do over here. Thank you very much. Looking forward.